So, Haikyu, man. Haikyu was crazy. I just finished watching it there about a month ago at this point, and it was fucking mental. It's what I needed. It's exactly what I needed in this particular time, in this whole COVID time, not being able to do the particular sport I enjoy. It was exactly what I needed to see and hear and all that jazz. It was really good, and I enjoyed it, and it was one of the most relatable pieces of media I've ever experienced. The second most relatable I've ever experienced personally, currently. Obviously, a silent voice for me kind of edges it out, but I'm not going to speak about a silent voice for a very long time. For that, I need to get my thoughts in the right mind when talking about that. But for Haikyuu, I can easily talk about it. It's a relatable in a more positive way. I'm not saying it's hard. I'm going on a tangent about a completely different thing now, haven't I? But that's just me in general, going on tangents. Also, yeah, sorry about the squeaky chair. It's still bad. Can't fix it, so I apologize for that, man. Um, Seriously though, Haikyuu was great, and as I said, it was one of the most relatable things I've ever experienced. It was so relatable. Just behind the silent voice, as I said, a silent voice for me was very relatable, but also very eye-opening for very different reasons, which I will someday get into, but not right now. So, yeah. But I loved Haikyuu, and I'm gonna talk about it now. Actually, I really loved it. Let's do it. And I have a lot I want to talk about with it. I read the manga, guys. I have to say this now in case I read the manga. I finished it, and holy shit, I'm usually always disappointed with endings. But the way they ended it, man, the way they ended it was awesome, and I'll get into that later. But I just wanted to say I love the ending. I'm not gonna lie. But let's talk about the main character first, right? Because I talked about relatability, and Shoya is so Shoya. Hinata Shoya is so relatable in many ways for me. Now, obviously, I didn't make pro in any capacity or anything like that, like he did, or anything by the end of the series or anything like that. But his motivations and his disadvantages are so kind of similar to mine. Obviously, he didn't have a height difference, so it wasn't the same disadvantage, but it was the same thing, right? Because obviously, I had a disadvantage due to, you know, my disability or whatever in doing any type of sport whatsoever, but you always wanted to be competitive. You always wanted to be able to compete, right? And that kind of desire to do that is so relatable, right? The desire to compete, no matter your ability or whatever, is entirely relatable, and to fight against your disadvantages to try and overcome them. It hit me in a weird way because I wasn't expecting it. Because I thought, man, I've gotten over having this disability, man. It's just something I have to live with, bro. I got over it eventually, and then it comes back, and then you're like, oh fuck. It comes back every now and then, and I'll get into that later with Tonica. I think the main bald guy in the team. Another thing he had, which is really relatable to me, but we'll get onto that later. But no, Shoya was just he hit because the idea of trying to be competitive in a sport where you have a major disadvantage or are literally unable to be competitive, in my case, like legit in certain sports due to a particular disability, and trying to fight against that, or trying to at least become good at the sport and fight, get as much out of it as you possibly can, and trying to be your best and compete, trying to compete, whether it's possible or not, whether you know you will be able to, trying your hardest so you're not dissatisfied with how things turned out. And obviously, I'm more of a different sport. Eventually, I went into swimming more so and tried to be competitive in that. And I still haven't finished trying, but I don't know how likely it is with COVID kind of fucking everything up. But I'm still gonna try. And the idea of Hinata in his chosen sport and the disadvantages he was given, the way he fought against it, it was inspirational, not gonna lie. Like, it was something I can really relate to in a sense, right? Because you do, obviously it's a different scenario. His is height, and it's not a literal be all end all. But for me specifically, sports is very. A lot of people expect you not to like any sports because it's hard for you to be good, and people think, oh, I'll go easy on him because of this, or I won't take him seriously. And I understand that, and I understand it's very respectable in your eyes, or in people's eyes in general, and I understand that. But that burning desire to be competitive with something, that burning desire to win, or to at least always try to win, never take it easy, always try to win. that desire is something I understand very well in a lot of things. That desire to not regret your decisions, that desire to keep fighting in whatever field you decide to fight in, whatever you choose to be your battlefield at this current point in time. Whether it's sports or whether it's something else, but particularly in sports in this case, it is something incredibly relatable, right? It is something that I think anyone can relate to, right? I feel like, because we all have our battles, right? And some people always give in, and that's fine. People give in all the time. But the idea of just constantly fighting against your disadvantages and keeping yourself headstrong and doing the best you can, doing always going all out. And in his case, he made it, but never thinking you won't make it for a second, and keep working, whether you make it or not. Always keep working as hard as you possibly can to give yourself the best chance with the disadvantages you have, and try and make use of your disadvantages to a benefit of yourself. That is a message I can really get behind with his character. And obviously I have other characters I relate to a lot. But the main character's whole ideal and his whole mindset, and I know some would say it's typical shonen, but the way they executed it here was very relatable to me, and I think that really hooked me in the series personally. I understand that situations are different, and people, you might say, how did you pull that out of that? But it just came to me. It's just what I thought of when I saw him and how he spoke, and it really kind of sat with me well. And even, for example, other characters like Ashie, fuck. The third year spiker, I can't pronounce names very well. Ashie, fuck. It's been a month since I watched this. Pronunciations are shit, my friend. I'm sorry. But like, honestly, his entire first arc was very relatable as well. Because as mentioned before, that slight doubt you have in your head, like, that can get to you sometimes. And the idea of it, like, overtaking you and making you feel maybe I don't like this sport, or maybe I'm not cut out for this sport or for this aspect of life. It is something people think about on the daily. People get really worried about, and myself, due to certain reasons, and due to a worry based on, am I good enough for this? Is it worth my time to keep doing this when I have to focus on securing a future, which is how I viewed it. Obviously, it's a different scenario, but, it's like, is it worth it? Am I good enough? And being depressed in yourself and feeling like you have to give up, and feeling like you're not worth it, or feeling like you don't like the sport anymore because you are not good enough. It's something that hits very hard, and feeling you let people down with making your decisions in hindsight, it does hit. And you still, even when you go back, you're still making mistakes, and you still have to grapple with the mistakes you make and the flaws you have. But you just have to make your most out of a situation, the best you can, the best you want to get out of it. Get the most you can out of it. And honestly, Ashia, I'm just gonna call him Bearded Guy from now on, because otherwise I'm gonna butcher his name the entire time, and I feel bad. I should have googled his pronunciation, because as I said, I didn't do this straight away for personal reasons, so I kind of can't pronounce the names great. I am sorry about that. But both these characters, and Chisa as well, the second year guy who is only captain when your man breaks his shoulder, his kind of thing, where he's like, it also stuck with me in that way, because it was the same situation. You feel, you give up. You give up on the sport. You give up for a while. You feel, let's say for me it was education, as I said. You feel I need to focus on a certain aspect, something else, and sports is getting in the way, or you don't feel good enough and you feel like it would just get in the way. If you're not good enough, get off the court and do something more beneficial. But then that feeling of wanting to go back, and that feeling of nagging, that feeling you need it, the feeling that you need that sport in your life, that you can't be without that sport, it's something that really hits. Especially now with COVID, and obviously this isn't a voluntary giving up of, for me, swimming personally. I can't swim. I can't go to a pool right now since June in my country. The only time we were able to swim was from June to July, and then the restrictions came back. Now, obviously, it was relatable because of what I went through previously in my life, but also because of COVID. There's so much like that yearning for a sport, that yearning for something, like needing it, but even though you can't have it right now, and having to go back later, and realizing that you need it even more now, and you'll never give it up again. It's something that really hits home with me, and these three characters are the first I bring up in this entire when I'm talking about it, because they were the first to make me think, man, because this was all in the first season, right? All this stuff, man. It like this show is gonna hit for me, and it really did. It was great, amazing, and how much they're able to convey the struggles of someone who's into sport with many disadvantages or sometimes advantages and many different things, many different situations, and how they're able to convey it. It's one of the most well conveyed, well written shows, and characters. The characters are so well written, and their struggles are so, like, you can feel it. If you've been involved in those situations, you can feel those situations, and you can feel how accurate they are, and you understand it. And it just, it hits in a weird way, because you don't expect that. You don't expect a medium to be able to do that, to be able to convey a sportsman's feelings and emotions on the court and off the court so well. And it was so relatable. Like, imagine the more you're into a sport, the more relatable it will be. But those three characters particularly, there was another character when I saw it, I knew this was going to be in my top anime, obviously, which was Tanaka, right? Tanaka was crazy. I don't know, man. All those others, obviously I've had experiences similar, and I was like, oh man, like, I can relate to it. Obviously the events were slightly different when it came to me, but I can heavily relate to their characters and their kind of what their struggles are, because it's very similar to mine. But someone whose struggles were almost identical in that one match in season 4 against the Mia brothers, where like every 6 months you're like, am I good enough? Am I just mediocre? You're usually very confident in your abilities, but then once every 6 months it just catches up with you, and your doubts catch up, and you don't know whether you can make it. You don't know whether you're good enough for it. You know what I mean? And that was something I could really, really relate to, and that was dead on. There wasn't any bending backwards I needed to... Not bending backwards. There wasn't any changes to my own situation I needed to make to fully relate to him, because obviously the other characters I spoke about their situations were slightly different to what mine was, but it was similar enough to be extremely relatable. But Tanaka's was dead on, straight on, no changes needed. That was so relatable. 110%. Incredibly relatable. It hit real hard, man. Because that happens so much. And I'm sure it happens to everybody. Whoever's confident in their own abilities, or becomes confident in their own abilities, at some point your thoughts will catch up on you, and you don't know how to deal with it at that point. And all you have to do is keep going, and you have to, because if you stop and you dwell on it, it will destroy you. And these particular characters really showed the strength of Haikyu, as I mentioned before. The author's ability to convey a sportsman's feelings and emotion, as I said before, was incredible. So relatable. I was amazed by it. And something that had really helped it, and I'm so happy that the animation studio was able to emulate this, because I just thought animation, that was the reason this was a thing. But I read the manga and was like, oh shit, it's in the manga as well, and it's so good. Is the eyes. The conveyance of the eyes was so amazing. How they showed a character's feelings and emotions and thought process through the eyes alone were amazing. And the determination shown through the eyes. It's something you can't show in realistic television, because you can't be that in depth. You can't get that close up. You can't get those tiny details that you might need to fully convey that particular type of scene. And it was fantastic. It was done fantastically in the anime, but the manga was just as good, and I wasn't expecting that. I thought the anime would have flared up the eyes, and that's how it was so good. But the manga really got it. Like, the manga really, really got it, I have to say, the exact same way. So hats off to the author. Their conveyance of eyes, both the studios and the author, was fantastic. It was a great way of doing it without conveying the thoughts and emotions and determination through just eyes, and it was amazing. And this is also something that hooked me on the series. I'm very happy it was still in there and kept in there. I do have my problems with the manga, don't get me wrong. And I have spoken about so much positive stuff about the anime and manga and why I love it, why the characters hit home so much for me. But there is a few things I didn't really like and about the manga specifically, because the anime was near perfect and so was the manga, but there was one particular thing I didn't like about the manga, and this is literally the only thing besides any story reasons, which I'll get into there later. The scoring, right? I don't know if this happened in later chapters because I just started reading it after I finished season 4, but you can only tell they scored by their reactions. They don't actually show the ball hitting the ground in the manga, or at least it's not very obvious on a phone screen or a laptop screen. Anyway, maybe they fixed certain ones. Maybe it was just a particular match. Maybe it's just in particular matches, and maybe they fixed them in volumes. I don't know. But like, for the good first 50 chapters of the manga I read after, so about like what 290 to 260 or to 4 to 360 or something. Yeah. Or not to 2. Yeah. For that amount of chapters, like, you were literally sitting there like, well, what the fuck, man? Like, I can only tell they scored through their reactions. I can't tell through the ball actually hitting the ground because it doesn't show that, or it doesn't make it obvious enough. And it's a small gripe. It's not that big of a gripe. It's not even a fucking gripe because it didn't matter because you could see by their reactions. But it was something small that did slightly annoy me, because that is one thing. The anime's impact, it showed through how the ball was animated was fantastic. And I must give them props. That's something the manga did not have. And obviously it's a different medium, but the anime I think is going to go down as an 11 out of 10 because the manga is still a 10 out of 10. Don't get me wrong, the manga is a fucking masterpiece. But the anime, once it finishes all together, if it keeps everything in, 10 out of 10, defo. 100% 10 out of 10. No questions. No fucking questions. Now, I wanted to speak on one other thing actually about this, and also again, sorry about the squeaky chair. There's nothing I can really do about that. I am deeply sorry about it, but sorry. There's nothing I can really do, to be honest. I'm so sorry. But one other thing I wanted to speak about. The Little Giant reveal was kind of disappointing, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I knew it was coming. I saw your man run into the stadium and I knew immediately who it was, thinking about it. But he was really rooting for your other man. He wasn't rooting for Hinata at all. And I understand that. Because the idea was what I took away from it was Hinata was an entirely different beast to the Little Giant now. Do you know what I mean? And the Little Giant, although he inspired him, was not the same guy anymore. But it's still just like, I don't know, you didn't have to have him still being part of volleyball or still being a volleyball player. I didn't expect that. But to have it so kind of there was no like big huge thing for Hinata meeting the Little Giant, and I do appreciate what he was going for. But the Little Giant he was rooting for your other man the entire time. He didn't give Hinata any props on the fucking field, and I was like, man, what are you doing? This guy looked up to you. He basically started his entire narration for the sport. And the entire time you're spectating, you're going like, oh, how amazing this other guy is. Now, I can't remember his name, and I'm not even going to try and butcher it because I don't need to speak on him. But it was really annoying, personally. I understand it, and I actually do like how he conveyed their interaction, because Hinata wasn't disappointed himself. When he met him, he was like, he just moved on. He loved the sport so much. He thanked your man for getting him into the sport, but after that, he wasn't disappointed that your man wasn't a volleyball player. You know, and I think oh, this fucking squeakiness is annoying me now. I think that was really did something to me, man. That was like, man, Hinata is a different beast of creature, and it was great. It was great. It turned out great, but it did initially gripe me that he was always cheering for your other man in the match, and that did gripe me a bit. Another thing that I really liked, actually, completely off the scale here. Oh, I forgot to mention, we're talking about manga here, so like, you should probably go off if you're an anime only, but it's a bit far now, right? I mentioned Little Joy, but however, uh, the initial kickback he's given at the end of that match or at the middle of that match where he has a fever, it hit, man. It really hit for many different reasons. And as I stated before, how I feel about Hinata is very, very strong, and the relatability. And this is going to be another one of those things you might be like, where'd you get this from, or where'd you find that from? But the idea of the kickback and feeling like you're helpless now or your hopes are finished, it's something I can really relate to because, again, as I mentioned, I've had so many situations now where I've had to go for surgery when I might have just made something, where I might have been able to do something, might have been able to get to where I wanted to, but was initially kicked back to have surgery for an obviously positive reasons, you know, to help me physically, but it was a kickback nonetheless, in the sense that I would have to recover from this. I would probably lose progress in what I was aiming for. And obviously his was different. His was a mild fever, and obviously he was already on the track to being competitive anyway. But it hit home in a weird way. I wasn't expecting it to, because it wasn't even closely relatable like my last one. Because I did relate to it, but it wasn't like, there was no real similarities. It was a fever. But it hit me in a way. It really did. Because that idea of feeling like, oh, that kickback might stop you. You know what I mean? It does hit in a weird way. It does feel a bit nostalgic, you know? That's why I love this character, and I will always think he's one of the best shonen protagonists. Now, I don't know where to put him, because I don't know how I feel about him dethroning Luffy, to be honest. Because I don't think he can. Because Luffy, I have a lot of respect for Luffy as well. Obviously, Hinata for me is way more relatable, and I love this guy. I love him. He's great. But he's definitely got to number 2, just like Haikyu. But oh man, just like the series itself. But is he there? Is he gonna dethrone Luffy for me? Because I've both read them very recently. I don't know. I really don't know how I feel about it, to be honest. Because why do I like Luffy? That's hard. I can discuss that some other time. But I might actually do something on talking about the two of them, and I just to kind of get my own thoughts across to myself, really, because I haven't thought about it much, and I do kind of want to do that, so I might do that, maybe. But back onto the actual Haikyu stuff. Oh, speaking of One Piece, actually, that cheeky One Piece reference, man, that was solid. That was real solid. In when he went to Brazil, that cheeky One Piece reference. Let's go. And the switch, I wanted to speak actually on the switch to beach volleyball, because that was mad. Personally, I think it was crazy. I love that idea, because this now wasn't relatable in a sense, because I've never gone abroad to do a sport in that particular sense. I've never gone abroad to live, so this wasn't relatable. But I think, this was something I've struggled with for a very long time, is the idea of being shackled to something, right? Not shackled to my country. I love Ireland. I love this country. But shackled to a job. Shackled to something where I'm like, I won't be able to do anything else. I won't be able to do what I care about. But I think when it opened up with Hinata, like, doing his pizza deliveries and also going to play beach, it hit. I'm going to keep saying that. It hit in a weird way. It resonated with me in a sense. I knew, right, and this is going to sound weird, like, it's possible. I'd never seen it, that it was possible. And I think because of how well your man conveyed previous emotions, I assumed if he's able to do it and he's conveying it that way, he must know it's possible. And I know that is a weird way to view it, because there's obviously so many real life examples, but it hit for me, man. it opened that idea of a cage and crushed that idea for me about, I'll be stuck. In a sense, it made me feel free, which is weird. It's weird to say for me. And it was literally one panel, or like half the first chapter of him being in Brazil. And for that, I love the Brazil arc. For that reason alone, I love the Brazil arc. It's so weird though to talk about, because it's like he literally just had a part-time job while doing what he loved. He wasn't trapped. He moved abroad to do what he loved. He was able to go away the second he wanted to. He wasn't trapped in any way. He was able to still do what he wanted while having to hold down a job. And I think I understand people have to work, and I understand that, and I working is a very respectable thing. You need to make your living, and I understand that, and I do that myself. But at the same time, the idea of being trapped in future, not when I'm necessarily in my 20s or 30s even, or 40s, or whenever, not then, not now. Not necessarily when you're in your late 20s or early 30s or whatever, but that feeling of when you hit the late 30s and you're like, am I trapped? And obviously he was 21 in this story, but am I trapped? Can I never move again? The idea that you can change your life up and it won't affect you, or it will affect you, but you can make the best of it. I think it just hit. It really did. It made me. It freed me in a sense from my own kind of self-doubt in whether I'd be shackled down to an office job, for example, in God knows how long, for like 50 years. And again, the pandemic had a part to play in this, because I've been living at home with family members, and I love my family, don't get me wrong, but my one of my family members works, the job they work at is incredibly demanding, and it's an office job. And I don't know, my view on office jobs are very similar. I view them as the hours will be similar, all that type of jazz. But they were working up until midnight every single night. And I think I felt like I can't be shackled like that. I can't be shackled to doing that. Because although they may feel fulfilled by being that reliable and by being that on top of things, I could not work that late and feel fulfilled. Feel like I've done something with my life. I need to do what I want. I'll be responsible. I'll get what I need done. But I need to be able to, when that clock hits a certain particular time, or when I feel like it, to just be able to go and change my life up, or go and do go and do what I feel like, in a sense. Obviously, you have to do your responsibilities. I'm not denying that, but not overdoing your work to a sense where it shackles you. And it kind of hit me that I might get to that situation. But oddly enough, when seeing that particular chapter, it kind of freed me. And I know it's weird to say. It was so weird to think about, because I didn't think a piece of media could do that. And I'm saying this a lot, but it really hit. It did, honestly. And I am honestly really appreciative of it, because I don't know why, because visually seeing that really worked. Right, I think I repeated that so many times, but I do apologize, but it really, okay. Well, let's move on. Because I have a few more things to say. Kuro's sentiment at the very end, just after they had that match, the black, what are they called, the black jackets? No, the black, fuck, I don't remember. Hinata's competitive team, after that match, when he's like, I'm actually gonna get it up now. Just give me a sec, actually. So I think I found the quote. Lads. So I'm gonna just read it out here, right? Because it's something that resonated with me when I read this quote. Because it made me realize this is why sports are so important. I love this quote. I've always thought about this quote and what I think about it in that sense, right? I agree with this so heavily. Sports creates jobs. It invigorates the economy. Lots of people get involved passionately about it. It can get you happier and healthier. And to top it all off, hardly anyone dies. Sports are amazing. I dare you to find anything else that's just as universally applicable and overwhelmingly beneficial. It's so true. There's nothing truer ever spoken about sports. It's one of the most amazing things, one of the most universally positive outcomes ever. And that statement capped off the series for me. Obviously, it was like 2 chapters before it ended, but it really capped it off very well because it really showed the benefits of sports and why so many people love it. Why so many people get so passionate about it. Because there's something that can never be replicated in anything else but sports. It does something to you. When you get really invested into a sport, really passionate about a sport, you won't understand it until you do, but once you do, there's something that changes within you. Something that you just can never understand without experiencing it. Sports, sports does something to you. It really does. It's amazing. And I think I've never heard someone state it in a form of media like that. And obviously you might be saying, well, these are fictional characters, and I get that. But the idea was, what I'm thinking is the author wrote this down. The author thought of this. And that's why it's so impactful, because I'm thinking someone else had that opinion. Someone else thought about it. Someone else knew how amazing it was and wrote about it. And that really capped the series off for me. Along with a brilliant end, I gotta be real. With the fist bump, with the 2 like top tier characters just doing a fist bump. That was great. Like, that was a great way to end it off. I gotta be real. That was amazing. And I love this series to death. It's so good. And I think I've conveyed it very well. Jesus, 36 minutes. That's crazy. Okay, this might not come out for a while. Oh no. But one other thing before I end this off. On the Shonen Jump app, it only had 42 chapters. But on Mal, it has 47 listed to complete it. So I'm missing something here. Because to me, it ended with the fist bump. Is there like 5 epilogue chapters that I'm missing here? Or what? Because I'm confused. Heavily confused, man. I don't know what's going on here. But that's besides the point. I love this series, man. It's so good. And if you haven't seen Haikyu, man, get on that. Especially if you're into sports in any particular way. It will really resonate with you. You relate to at least one of the characters, at the very least, if not every single one of them. The way the author conveys the character's emotions and how great he does his story is fantastic. I have never related so much to something like this, to so many characters. Because there's something where medium I have related to more. There's a particular movie I've related to a particular character so much on such a level. But never to so many characters at the same time. Never to nearly the entire cast have you related to it. Because in sports, there's so many motivators, so many reasons you're motivated. So everyone had something you were similarly motivated about. It was so relatable, and I really appreciate it. I only talked about my favourites here. It was so amazing. Just watch Haikyu, lads. Just get your cup of tea and watch Haikyu, okay?